Cisco Certified Network Associate Day 13. Welcome back everybody, I'm Imran Rafai, your trainer for this entire series. Today we would be dealing with VLAN configuration, which means we would be doing the configuration of all the concepts that we learned in the last couple of videos. Before we go any further, I would ask you to go and like our page in Facebook, which is facebook.com/networking consultant, like you see on the bottom left. And also go to our YouTube page, which ideally will be the page that you're seeing this from, right? So please subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll keep getting new notification whenever we add new videos. You could also go to our website, which is available at nwking.org, where we have a list of all our playlists, and you will be able to also interact with us. You could send us feedbacks. You could also find our notes, our workbooks, everything relating to videos. I will upload it on our website. So please keep in touch. And if you want to keep in touch with me, my LinkedIn profile is available, so you can search for me on LinkedIn and also on Twitter. So you can contact me in all these things. And like I've always said, you can email me imran.rafai@nwking.org if you have any questions. So without wasting much time, let's get straight into today's class. Today we would be discussing three things. We would be learning how to create a VLAN, how to assign ports to a VLAN, and how we can look at the VLAN database. I'll make use of Packet Tracer. So let's open Packet Tracer. Right, so this is a topology I have drawn. We have three switches. On the first switch, we have two computers, which is part of VLAN 10, and I have used IP addresses of the range 192.168.10.0/24, and I've given this computer .1, that is 192.168.10.1. This is 10.2. Now, also another thing to notice is this is not mandatory, but this is how people use to identify the VLAN. So the third octet of the IP address will correspond to the VLAN ID. Now this is not mandatory. You can have anything you want, but you will find this in almost all the major companies where they would assign one octet, maybe the second or the third, to the VLAN ID, so it becomes easy for the administrator to configure. Right, so this is 192.168.10.0/24 IP address range in VLAN 10, and VLAN 20 is using the IP address 192.168.20.0/24. Right, so on the first switch we have two computers. So let's assume you are it's a new company that's starting, and on the first floor they have two computers, and that, let's say VLAN 10 is sales VLAN, and we have another computer on that same switch, which is marketing, and they have one more computer, and that's in VLAN 20. Now they expand, they go to the second floor, they get two more staff to place for two more computers. So they put two more computers and they place two more staff there, and they want to expand the sales team, so they get in, let's say, another building, or maybe on the same building, third floor, and they have three more computers there, and it's also part of VLAN 10. Right, VLAN 10 and VLAN 10, they should be able to communicate without any problem. Similarly, VLAN 20 should be able to communicate with each other in spite of them being in different floors, maybe in different buildings, right? So that's the concept we would be exploring today. So I have not configured anything, I've just drawn this topology. So let's see how we can configure. So I'll start with PC0. So I click on that, I click on PC0 and put the IP address. So IP address is 192.168.10.1, and I put a subnet mask, which is automatically populated, 255.255.255.0. And I'm not going to use default gateway, because default gateway, if you've watched day 3 AM, PM and LN videos, you would know that we need gateway if we want to exit from one network and go to another network. Now in this case, we are not going to do that. We are not going to layer 3. We are going to configure only layer 2. So we are not going inter VLAN or inter network routing. That will happen when we start routing a little later in this series, but for now we're going to stay at layer 2. We're going to only look at switching levels. So we will not make use of default gateway. We're going to communicate intra this network, that is 192.168.10.0/24. We would be communicating between the hosts of this network. I go to this computer, I'm going to go do the same thing. I go here 192.168.10.2 and put the subnet mask. Now, can I ping from this computer to this computer? Let's see. Ping 192.168.10.2. Right, it is pinging. Now, if you see here, it says the reply is received from 192.168.10.2 and all these values, right? So that means communication is happening between these two computers, that is PC0 to PC1. Communication is happening through the switch. Now, why is PC0 and PC1 be able to communicate with each other? To understand that, we will look into the switch. So the same communication, we'll see how the switch looks at this. So first we'll go to user exec mode. So we type enable, right? Now we type show VLAN, right? Now this is the VLAN table or VLAN database of this switch. Now this switch technically has 5 VLANs by default, right? That is VLAN 1, VLAN 1002, 1003, 1004, and 1005. But if you look here, the 1002, 3, 4, and 5 are unsupported. It says unsupported, unsupported, unsupported. Now these are VLANs from older technologies. Now you'll see here, token ring, FTDI, FTDI net, TRNet, right? Now these are not supported in today's world, but due to technical requirements, these VLANs are still part of today's devices, but they are not going to be used. So for all practical purpose, this switch has only one VLAN, and which is VLAN 1. VLAN 1 is also the default VLAN for a Cisco switch. When it comes out of the box, factory settings, a Cisco switch has all the ports of the switch part of this VLAN 1. So you will see here, port FA0/1, 2, 3, 4, and all the ports until 24, and also gigabit Ethernet ports 1 and 2 are all part of VLAN 1 or the default VLAN. No, that is the very reason why communication between this switch, between this device and this device worked, because both of them are part of the VLAN 1 or the default VLAN. Right, so part of our requirement for this task is to change this VLAN. So we need to put these two devices, or rather the ports connecting these two devices, in VLAN 10. So if you go here, Packet Tracer will let you know by hovering over this bubble. So you see that this is FA0/1 port and this is FA0/2, right? So I'm going to go back to the switch and I'm going to put these two ports. So I'll go in, I'll say configure terminal, right? And I'm in config T, or the global configuration mode. I will go into this port. So I'll go interface FA, that is fast Ethernet 0/1, right? I'm going to hard code this port to be an access port. Why? Because this is an access port. I know that. So I'm going to hard code it. So switch port mode access, right? Now what happened? Because I've hard coded this to be an access port, in this port, no matter, even if you take this port and connect to another switch, DTP communication, if you remember DTP from one of our previous videos, dynamic trunking protocols, right? What does dynamic trunking protocol do? It communicates with the neighboring switch. It does a negotiation. It negotiates a trunk. But when you do switch port mode access, by default, the DTP communication does not happen for this port, and this port is configured by configured to be an access port. It's statically configured, right? Now, when I put only this command, by default, this port is part of VLAN 1. That's default. Now, if you want to change this, I say switch port access VLAN, and I give a VLAN number. So I'm telling this switch needs to be part of a certain VLAN. Now, part of this topology, we know that this device should be part of VLAN 10. So that means I'm going to put this port, that is FA0/1 in VLAN 10. So I say switch port access VLAN 10. Look what happened. It says access VLAN does not exist, creating VLAN 10. Now what just happened? If you remember, we looked at the VLAN database. VLAN database had only VLAN 1. It did not have VLAN 10. Now, but we have asked this switch to go to VLAN 10. So it's telling, so the switch is saying, you asked me to go to VLAN 10, but I don't have VLAN 10. So I'm going to create VLAN 10 and apply this port, or rather put this port into VLAN 10. Now, if I go into the VLAN database, so I'm going to say show VLAN, right? It shows me the VLAN database. Now you see that there is a new VLAN that's created, VLAN 10, that has a default name. This is by default when you create it, it gives a random name, or not a random name, it's VLAN 0010, so you know it's VLAN 10. And you see that port FA0/1 is now part of VLAN 10, right? So we have not made any changes to the computers. We have only made a change to this port that's connected to the computer. Now, we did this earlier. Will this ping? The same thing which was working perfectly fine a few minutes ago when we did not make any change to the switch. We'll see if this works now. It is not working, and it will not work. The reason it will not work is because now this port is part of VLAN 10 and this port is still part of VLAN 1, and no communication can happen whatsoever between two different VLANs. So if this communication has to work, what we need to do is we need to make sure that we put both the ports in the same VLAN. So let's go into the global config mode again, and I go into FA0/2, switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 10, right? So if you see, the command that I gave to put in VLAN is exactly the same. Switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 10, switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 10, right? Now what happened, if you go back here, show VLAN, you have VLAN 10, but now we have FA0/2, FA0/1 and FA0/2, both are part of VLAN 10. Now, will this work? What do you think? Yes, it worked. It works because both of them are part of the same VLAN, right? So, like we said, if VLAN 10, let's name it sales. So I go back here, right? Now, if you want to make any changes to a VLAN, I can go into that VLAN. So I say VLAN 10, and now if you see here, the prompt says I am in VLAN. I'm in a VLAN sub command. Now here, if I say question mark, you will see that I have only 3 commands. I can give a name, which is the name of that, and I say no is no to negate anything, and then I have exit. Now when you exit, that's when changes get applied. So I come here and I say name sales, and I say exit. Now whatever command I've given for name gets applied. We can go see that, show VLAN. You can see VLAN 10 is now called sales, right? And both of these are part of the sales VLAN. Now let's assume, like we discussed, you're in an office, a new hire, you set up 2 computers, you put them in a VLAN called sales. Now the company says, okay, they want to hire a marketing team, right? So you configure a new computer, a new laptop, company buys a new laptop, and they ask you to configure that on that same switch, so on the same LAN. So now let's go give it an IP address. According to our topology, the IP address would be 192.168.20.1. Again, we're not gonna use default gateway. Now I'm gonna go to the switch, right? And I am going to go to this interface. So it will be configure terminal interface FA0/3 switch port mode access, switch port more access. Yes, tell me, what will it be? VLAN 20. Yes, it says access VLAN does not exist, creating VLAN 20. Now, this is not the only way. What you could also do is you can create, so let me do this. I could have done this. I could say VLAN 20 and hit enter. What it would have done is it would have created a VLAN 20, right? So this is one way of doing it. You click on this. If it's not there, it will create a VLAN. But you can create a VLAN by just giving this command. You say VLAN 20 or any number you want, and you go into the VLAN sub command. Here you can give a name if you want. I'll say name marketing, right? And then I say exit. A new VLAN will be created on the VLAN database. So you can go there and see show VLAN show VLAN, right? And you will see that VLAN 20 marketing is created and FA0/3 is part of that VLAN. Now, can I ping from this device to this device? No. Why? Because of two things. One, they are different VLANs. Two, they're part of different subnets, right? If you see 192.168.20.0 and the other one is 192.168.10.0, right? So even if they were part of the same VLANs, they would not communicate because the network is different. But in this case, they're part of different VLANs. So the switch will drop packets. If it's trying to come here, it'll say there's no other port which has VLAN 20, so I'm going to drop you, right? So that is how you configure. Now, like we discussed earlier, the company is expanding and the company wants to create more marketing team. So it hires a small office on the first floor where they can put 2 computers. So they put 2 computers, 2 staff there, and they want you to configure a VLAN 20 or the marketing VLAN in that, and they want you to communicate with this guy or this marketing personnel on the ground floor. So what do? First, I need to configure a trunk. So I'm going to go here. This is FA0/4 and FA0/1. So in this switch, FA0/1 is a trunk. So I'm going to go here. I say config terminal interface FA0/4 switch port mode trunk, right? And in older switches, you had to give one more command saying switch port trunk encapsulation .1q, but newer switches don't have that command encapsulation because, like we discussed in one of our previous videos, there is only one encapsulation technology that we use in today's world for trunks, and that is 802.1q. Earlier, Cisco had a proprietary trunking protocol known as the ISL or the inter switch link, but that's not used anymore. Even Cisco trunks, they work on IEEE standard 802.1q encapsulation, right? So that's also popularly known as .1q, right? So you don't have to give that command anymore. By default, it will work on 802.1q. Now, if I go to show VLAN, I will see that FA0/4 is gone missing now. Why? Because this is a VLAN table and it will only show access ports which are configured with a certain VLAN. How do I see the trunk of the switch? I say show interface trunk, right? When I do that, I see that FA0/4 is trunk and it is an on. It has an encapsulation of 802.1q. Status is trunking, and the native VLAN for this trunk is 1. We discussed native VLAN, right? So for this trunk, if it receives a traffic without VLAN tags on it, it is going to automatically put that in VLAN 1, right? That's what the native VLAN is, and we will discuss and configure native VLAN in the next video. For now, just know this is how you look at the trunks for that device, right? So similarly, I'm going to come here. So this is FA0/1. So I'm going to go to the switch. I'm going to go into the config mode, interface FA0/1, switch port mode trunk, right? This is already in trunk. Also, part of our requirement, we need to configure these two as access ports, so FA0/2, and I believe it is FA0/3, right? So I'm going to put FA0/2 and FA0/3 into VLAN 20. So I'm going to go here, config T, right? In the earlier example, for this switch, we individually went to different ports and configured. So I'm going to go show you a shortcut. So what you could do is you could take a range. So I say interface range FA0/2 to 3, right? What it did, it's now it has taken a range of FA0/2 and FA0/3. Now you could do this range to take maybe up to 20 lines together, right? Now, like I showed you in the previous example, you are basically configuring the same line of command, like switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 10, right? So instead of typing it multiple of times in every port that you want it to be in that VLAN, you could give one command, right? You could type that once and it gets applied on all that by making use of this range command. So that's why we use range command. Now I say switch port mode access, switch port access VLAN 20. Again, same thing. In this switch, we did not create a VLAN, so automatically it gets VLAN 20 gets created here, right? So this has VLAN 20 now, and I'm gonna exit. I will see show VLAN will tell me that switch port 02 and 03 is part of VLAN 20, right? Now let me configure IP addresses here. So I'm going to give this .2, so 192.168.20.2. I'm going to close this, and I'm going to do the same thing here, 192.168.20.3, right? Now, will this work? Can I ping from here to here? Ping 192.168.20.2. Absolutely yes, it is pinging because they're both part of the same VLAN and they're both connected to the same switch. Now the question is this. Now these two devices are connected in different switches, but they're still on the same VLAN. Will it work? So I'm going to do the same thing. Ping 192.168.20.1, which is this device here. Will it work? Absolutely yes, it is working without any problem, even though they're connected to different switches. So what's happening? Traffic is coming here, it's going through the trunk, coming to the switch, and then it's going here, and they're communicating absolutely no problem. Can I communicate from here to here? Absolutely not, because they're part of different VLANs and they have different network IDs. Similarly, let's configure the same switch here. So I'm going to make this link also has trunks. So this is FA0/4 and this is FA0/1. Alright, now similarly we're going to configure this as trunk. So this is FA0/4 and this is FA0/1. So I'm going to go to the switch again, and I'm going to say config T interface FA0/4 switch port mode trunk end, right, or exit. Right, similarly I'm going to configure this switch. So go to this switch and I will say enable config T interface FA0/1 switch port mode trunk. Okay, so now I've created a trunk here. So this is a trunk. So if you see here, it's an amber state. So this will go, it'll update itself and it will come here. Now I'm going to put these three ports, that is FA0/2, 3 and 4 in VLAN 10, so that these devices also can be configured and they can communicate with each other. So I'm going to go here, config T interface range FA0/2 to 0/4. Right, I'm going to take a range switch port mode access switch port access VLAN 10, right? Same thing, it says creating VLAN not present, so it's creating a new VLAN, right? So now show VLAN, you'll see that FA0/2, 0/3, and 0/4 are all part of VLAN 10. I'm going to configure these devices. So these devices have an IP address 192.168.10.3, right? So this is, sorry, it is 192.255.255.0. okay, similarly I'm gonna put that IP address here, 192.168.10.4. okay, and this is going to be 192.168, sorry, 168.10.5, right? Now the question is the same thing, will this be able to ping with the device on the ground floor, or so it's 0, right? So ping 192.168.10.1, will it work? Right? So can you pause the video and think why it's not working and then come back to me? Right, I assume you guys just paused and you'll come back. When we tried to ping from here to here, it worked absolutely fine, no problem, right? Even though they're part of different switch, they communicated, they came here and they communicated absolutely fine. Now here, same thing, we have configured this as trunk, this as trunk. Now I'm trying to communicate from here to here. It's not working. Why? To understand that, we need to understand why or how the switches work. Now when you send a packet from here to this switch, what this switch does is it says, okay, you're coming from port FA0/4, and it looks at its VLAN database. So it says, okay, like this. So this is the switch. I'm going to go to the switch. It looks at the VLAN database and it says FA0/4, you're coming from that, is part of VLAN 10. So it takes that frame of the traffic, it adds a field. It adds a field, or rather it tags, and it puts a VLAN ID of VLAN 10. It sends it out on the trunk. This is the trunk. The traffic comes here. Traffic hits this switch. This switch takes the traffic and it looks at itself and says, okay, I see that you're coming to VLAN 10, and it looks at its VLAN table or VLAN database, which we see here, and it sees that it does not have a VLAN 10. So it says, okay, you want to go to VLAN 10, but unfortunately I don't have VLAN 10. What it does, it just drops the packet. So now this device or any of these devices, they can communicate with each other, no problem. But if it tries to communicate with a device on this switch, it will not be able to do that, because this switch in between does not know anything about VLAN 10. Now we can solve this. What we need to do is we can come here to this switch, configure terminal. I create a VLAN 10. So all I have to do is say VLAN 10, name marketing, and exit. Now will this work? So I go here, I try the same command, and it's sending an ARP request. So let's wait. First packet dropped, so no reply for the first ping message. Second dropped. Third, why is it not working? Now it should. All right. So you see the fourth one worked. So I'm going to do that again. So the first three failed because of ARP. So it had to send that IP address, search for the MAC address. So that took time. So 3 packets dropped. But now when I try, it knows because it has ARP cache and it is directly sending to the MAC address, right? So what did I do? I just went to this device in between and created that VLAN in that switch. Even though that switch has nothing to do with that VLAN, that switch had to know about that VLAN to take part in that communication. Now, if you have hundreds of switches in your network, you can't physically go to every device and manually configure MAC address. You can't manually configure the VLAN IDs on all the switches. That's why we have something called as the VTP or VLAN trunking protocol, like we discussed. We will look how to configure VTP in the next video. For this video, this is all that we had to discuss. So we go back to our review slides. Let's see what we discussed. We had to discuss create VLAN, assign ports to VLAN, and view VLAN database. So for creating VLAN, we use this command, switch port, from the global config mode, we say VLAN and gave a number. That's one way to do it. We could also do it without, we could go into interface mode and say switch port access VLAN. If the VLAN is not present, it creates a VLAN. But this is the command to create VLAN. You just go VLAN and give a number, and you can change the name of that VLAN by saying name and giving a name, whatever name you want. And then do not forget to exit. Type the command exit to apply those changes to your VLAN database. Next, assign ports to VLAN. You go to that particular interface where you want to change to a certain VLAN. From that interface, you could give the command switch port mode access. This is statically configuring that port to be an access port, and then switch port access and then give the VLAN number. So switch port access VLAN and the VLAN number would assign that particular port to that particular VLAN. Next, how do we look at the VLAN database? You go to the user exec mode and type show VLAN, and it would list out the VLAN database, and you will see the VLANs that is present. If you want to see the trunk in that particular switch, you can say show interface trunk. It will show all the trunks in that switch, so you know which port is a trunk port, right? So thank you so much for watching. Like I said, you can visit our website nwking.org. You can like our Facebook page, Networking Consultant. Also, please do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Networking Inc., as you see in the bottom right hand corner. Please write into me if you have any queries regarding today's video. Also, like I said, our website will very soon have sample tests. You will have all notes, workbooks, everything associated in our on our website. So please visit our website. Please share this channel, share these videos with your friends, and thank you once again for watching. See you very soon. Bye bye.